Hello and welcome to the Ratnest podcast, episode number 30 with Hank Simmons.
Hey!
What up, boys?
What up, Hank?
dude?
Our original rodent.
What was that?
Our original rodent here, man. You're ride or die. Been with us from the beginning.
Yeah, dude, can't get out. Don't want to.
Nah, it's death or out is the only way you're out of Ratnest, bro.
Yeah,
we jump
bro.
you in, that's the only way out, just like a game.
Blood in, blood out, baby.
Ooh.
We call you Miklo. On the West Coast, we refer to you as Miklo.
Ooh. Is that Spanish? I know zero Spanish.
Yes, for Michael.
Ooh. I'll
for
take it.
for
Just
Hank, I don't know what it would be. Henry, it'd be like Jorge. No, that's George. I don't know.
Henri.
I don't know. We'll figure it out.
I don't know. It's too hard to figure out. What's up, dudes?
Good fucking seeing you, dude.
I know it's been a minute. It's been a long time.
We just got done talking to Brian Judge, who was also there when we went out there last time we saw you in Raleigh. So that was super cool to reminisce about that. But we got to do the same. You know it. We had a blast when we went out there and saw you, man. We
did a bunch of illegal shit.
You showed us so much hospitality.
My bad. Wait, did I just ruin that? Were you supposed to wear the mask for that? What?
No, it's good. No, it's all allegedly illegal shit.
That's right.
I put that sticker on your car, which is probably pretty illegal. You had to peel that shit off later.
I've been watching a lot of like Judge Jerry Springer, and I've learned that if you just put allegedly before it, we're not admitting to anything.
That's right.
Interesting.
Yeah, dude, I remember going out to my truck the next day and seeing that sticker and having zero recollection of doing it.
You didn't do it.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, you definitely didn't do it. I was like, it'll be funny if I put this on his car. And I did all half-assed, so not all the letters were there. It was just like the rat. And then it was like R-T-E-S. Or like some stupid. It's like, damn.
Cool though. No, I was like, dude, that is awesome. I laughed very hard.
In my mind, it was funny. That night, I was like, this is going to be hilarious.
And it was. Dude, that night too, we have like 30 minutes of a conversation between you and David Moses where you're like spilling beer as you're standing outside the entire time. Like to make your point, you're like throwing beer at him out of your cup.
Yeah.
And dude, that conversation was
yeah. I think you were purposely throwing beer.
Oh, he
out
absolutely
of your cup,
was.
You son of a bitch.
There's no telling. I think all of that is just stuff that'll just die on a hard drive. Just absolutely.
Hey, but I got to watch it. I got to film it and then rewatch it and laugh both times.
It was so funny. And we were just talking to David and I was like, do you remember when you and Hank were like 8 Mile outside of that brewery and there's just like a crowd of people around you while you spit comic verses, like just going back and forth.
Just absolute nonsense, bro. Oh,
my favorite part as I was rewatching it. Oh no, I'm interrupting you. My favorite part as we were rewatching it, at one point I was so in my own head filming. I'm like, yeah, keep going. And David stops and he's like, hey, I'm sorry. This is really distracting. Like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh fuck, my bad. I forgot you guys could see me. Like I thought I was the camera here.
You thought you're gone.
Yeah, we were hammed that night. A show at a brewery. What do you expect? We had a great tab there.
Yeah, no, we had an incredible time there. That was one of probably in the later years of making art, I've absolutely hated doing art shows. So that was probably one that I did that I was like, nah, this is fun. Like, this is tight. Like, you've drawn out a crowd of people that aren't, like piss and vinegar with like a stick up their ass. Like, it was very mellow. And I was like, that's way more fun. It makes it more about the art and less about people trying to seem like they're like deep when like they're just, it doesn't matter. It never matters. But no, I thought it was tight. I think, we got a little rowdy, but that's what it's for. I mean, why not?
No, it was good. No, absolutely. Dude, you showed us a good time. You showed us around Raleigh proper, man. It was a blast.
Dude, I had to.
Yo,
I had to.
I don't know if you know this. I don't know if we've talked about this. The night we left your house.
Oh, God.
Because
I drove you home because you couldn't you couldn't
so
walk
Jim drove
straight.
your truck home, and I followed you guys, and then my phone died, and I didn't remember exactly where you lived. We had been there the day before, so I got there and I found my way to your apartments, but I parked on the way other side of the whole complex.
Dude, your apartment complex is like 13 miles, dude. It's big.
And so I found you guys. I found your apartment. I got Jim, and we left. And then we couldn't find my car for like an hour.
Hour and a half, bro. Hour and a half.
We
and
walked
I had
around
already
your apartments for so long with my clicker, like just trying to like beep my car. It was crazy.
Well, and I had already sobered up at the brewery to drive you home because you weren't gonna get home. So we're there and we were just chilling at your pad. I hadn't drank, and then he gets back. I was like, all right, let's roll, let's drive home. And he's like, all right, let's bounce. We walked around for an hour and a half clicking the clicker, like to the point where we were like about to sleep on a bench. Like, fuck.
Dude, Jim was so mad at me.
I was so mad. I was so mad.
Jim was heated.
We had a trying moment in our relationship at that time because I wasn't getting mad. I was like, it's all right, bro. We'll just find it. We'll be all right. And finally, Matt looks at me and goes, dude, I fucked up. Get pissed at me. And I was like, all right, motherfucker, you fucked up. What the fuck? And I let this whole diatribe of pissed off rant go. And then he looks at me and goes, God damn, calm down, dude. And I was like, oh, but fuck you, dude. So yeah, we about lost our shit that night. And then
where we're at?
It was just like in the top parking lot. Like,
but like 4 units over.
Yeah. Like your apartments go like staircase, parking lot, kind of like they weave in and out of like the complex. And I was just in the farthest side possible. And we were like on the bottom by the woods, by like where, you know what I mean? And I was like, I don't know where I parked.
Hey, I'll tell you what though, Hank, it was all worth it for the moment we heard the beep. We were walking and I was like, stop. I think I heard it. Click it again. And we heard beep, beep. We're like, oh my God. We hugged, rolled around on the grass. Like we were so excited in that moment that we couldn't fucking handle it. It was all worth it at that point. It all just melted away in the excitement.
We literally were like, we're going to go just sleep on Hank's floor right now because we can't find the fucking car. It was crazy.
And then I didn't know our way back to your place after that. So I was like, I'm not going to get lost even further just trying to find a place to sleep. Like, let's go in the direction the car is.
Do you live in a maze?
I think so, dude. I like the first week I moved there would get like lost getting home.
Yeah.
And I don't understand it because it's literally just like a straight all the way through, but every single complex looks the same. That I think when I moved again, I probably drove past my house probably twice. Like, oh shit, there it is. And like have to back up. Well, but y'all might have went all the way to like a different complex and come back.
Well, whatever we did, it was meant to be because it basically forged the Ratnest relationship. Is like, all right, we can deal with anything. If we can deal with losing a rental car just because we're a little too drunk, like we could get through anything now.
We can survive a weekend with Hank. We can get through anything.
That's right. We didn't end up arrested. We didn't. Nothing bad happened to us. Worst that happened is we lost the rental car for an hour and a half. We good.
And you found it. Boom.
Exactly.
That's it, dude.
Problem solved.
Well, let's get back to the real reason that you're here, dude. We love you to death, and we had such a good time. But you're doing art and killing it.
Yeah.
Continuing, just crushing it since last year, just moving along forward. What have you been doing this lately?
I appreciate that. I mean, I've been trying. I definitely last year was definitely like a year where I kind of hit like if you don't do this shit now, you're not going to do it. So you need to like get your ass in line. And you guys were super helpful with that. I mean, there was probably wouldn't have known how to do it without getting linked with y'all. And then went from there. We did Do the Damn Thing,
which was great.
We dropped it. We sold a bunch. We got it picked up at Holy Mountain Printing, which was tight. So we got, a pretty good amount of advertisement for something that you and I kind of talked about doing, just almost like jokingly, like let's just take a bunch of old drawings and just take a point from like the last podcast where it was just, you just do it, you know, you just do the damn thing, and kind of made a little zine out of it. And it's kind of become something where like we talked like probably a couple weeks ago, like we want to do an issue 2, like, and so I think from that, it gave me a lot of direction when it came to making more books. So for the last year, I started doing Space Gator with Tim over at Goatman. So we're almost done with page 1, which has been super cool. Jumped up from doing everything at like 9x12 to doing like 11x17s.
Oh,
so
wow. Okay.
Bigger pages, so it's easier to scan.
Yeah, that's sick.
Yeah. And so it's been tight. Like I really liked writing and drawing the comics, but also I've really liked like taking a backseat to the writing and just drawing somebody's shit.
So is it, it's 100% of Tim writing it?
Yeah. Tim writes the entire script. He sends it to me and I do all of the penciling, inking, and coloring. That's how we did his last comic he did. It was like a short 5-page horror. And that's how we're doing this one. I kind of really like it because it allows me to just focus on art, to where like any other comic I'm doing, I'm worrying about the writing, like the grammar and shit like that.
Trying to figure out how to like move the story along, or like what the dialogue's going to be, what you know, whereas if you get just the idea of what you need to draw, you can kind of focus on that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, even in a situation too, like it would be to the point where even if I was like, I don't get it, but your script tells me exactly what to draw, I can kind of just free my mind to draw it and give just total creative control to the visual aspect. Because y'all see a lot of my artwork, you know, I like to go like the weirder, the better. And so it gives me that availability to go, I don't have to worry about what he is like saying specifically. I just have to worry about how I represent this text.
Which is awesome because it gives you a direction, so you don't have to be the creative genius that sparks it. Like it gives you something to focus at. But but given the creative, what did you just say a minute ago? Like the freedom to create it however you want. He just gives you a direction with the word, and boom, you get to visualize what you read, rather than having to come up with what the story is going to be and how is it going to look, and should I change it because it'll look better this way. Like
you might not get hung up as much if you're not doing both. Right?
Exactly. Yeah,
for sure. And I think that's kind of the point I've really liked, because I know a lot of people who make comic books are really get pigeonholed into like, I have to write, I have to, like, it has to all be me. And just kind of like by accident, I got thrown into the like world of like, oh, I really just have to draw it if I want to just draw it. And it kind of does, like, it takes a little bit of that pressure off of like, I don't have to figure out the story. I just have to draw whatever the writer's telling me to draw. Yeah. And it, you know, like there's a bunch of stuff in this comic that's like weird that I would never come up with in a cool way. And it's like, I don't have to sit there and interpret that, or I just have to figure out how I want to draw it. Yeah. And it kind of a whole new way to like make comics. Cause I know you guys know, cause you've read a lot of Blood Sermon. It's like, it's so image driven that this kind of came easy because it just pushes me into like, I just have to use the images to tell how I want to tell whatever the hell the writer wants me to tell.
Yeah. Well, one thing I love about Blood Sermon is that it is so visual driven. You know, you use almost, it seems, as few words as possible and let the picture do the talking, you know? And I love that because, I mean, not just the style is very like vocal, if that makes sense. Like it yells at you kind of when you're looking at it. So you don't want to get distracted with all the words. You want to make up your own story or visualize how Blood Sermon's making it through this, you know, whatever fuck he's going through.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like it's, you know, because I yell at the paper so that the artwork yells. And I spend about 25 minutes a day just screaming at sheets of paper.
Well, it shows, bro. It comes out.
know who's in charge. You know, I drag a knife across my face. I like to get real weird with it. But no, I do. I appreciate that, because a lot of the comics that got me interested in making comics were not necessarily like heavily dialogued comics. They're just a lot of image driven shit. And I tried to utilize that as much as possible because I have bad handwriting. And like that is part of it. Like my handwriting is shit. And so like when I first started Blood Sermon, I was super careful. And then I was like, well, if I can use, I use a lot of the image to tell the story. So it creates me having to write less kind of subconsciously, because that like really is like the longest part to all of this, is like making sure like my letters are the same size.
Sure.
Yeah, because my handwriting is terrible. Like it's bad. And so it kind of helps with Blood Sermon because it is something that is so easily image driven that like I wanted to use as much imagery as possible versus like cluttering a page with writing that isn't necessarily that important either.
Well,
like
also,
you don't need to.
I was gonna say the initial pages that at least I've seen from the beginning phases of it, the character is kind of alone, so there's not whether. I mean, I guess if it was internal dialogue, you could write some stuff out, but you really kind of just like let the illustration speak for this, person that is by himself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like him and a monkey paw that just floats with, that's essentially just kind of like a endless inventory. Like most of the parts you see, the passage is their name. Most of the time you see him is either in the introduction or when they're either talking shit or just showing up in the middle of something that's combative. And that is like a good point, because like I did really want to have a very like lonely story. Like I really didn't want to utilize like romance. I didn't want there to be that element. I really didn't even want there to be like a like best friends like fuck up the world kind of thing either. Just really just a story driven by the images of just one person traveling through hell. And I think I appreciate that, because that was really what I went for. There were so many opportunities to use companion characters and so much text where I was like, I'm just going to use most of this page for a picture.
Yeah.
And I kind of liked being able to do that.
But it's like you had such a higher thought of your own work that you didn't want to dumb it down for the audience either. It's like, all right, like I want them to think of like how I think of it while I'm creating it, right?
Yeah, dude, and that's one thing I have to say. You have balls for like taking away your explanation of the story and letting the reader kind of create the story. Like as a musician, doing hip hop especially, I wanted all words. My words, I'm going to guide you exactly where I want you to be thinking, but taking away the text and allowing the page to the picture, the image to actually lead the story. It allows them to paint whatever dialogue they want it to be, and it allows them to probably work through shit in their own life. Yeah. Their own projections. Their own projections into it, which is so rad because of that, dude. I can't tell you how many times I've looked at Blood Sermon and been like, like feel different things based off what I'm feeling when I'm looking through it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's weird that I say looking through it, because right there, it's not, I don't feel like I'm reading a comic. It's like I'm looking through this story as I'm going through with the boundary lines of the wording. And the way that you do it is great. And I think it took balls to be able to say, here's my creation, interpret it,
Yeah, no, man, like I seriously really, really am speechless. No, I really appreciate that. I think that's something I don't always see, because of that is very much where I didn't really think about the reader when I made it. I thought very much about kind of what you said. Like, you guys know my background. I come from gallery art. I come from painting. And I really appreciate that, because I've never really taken, that kind of emotional inventory of like, what is it mean to me when I go through it, because I am constantly trying to create it. And that is part of the reason I wanted to use so much imagery, is because growing up reading stuff like the Max, there was so much pieces of every page that looked legitimately just like a finished painting. You could take a panel, you could frame it, and it looked like just a normal, like, contemporary piece of artwork. And that just carried on, like, even growing up, like watching The Tick, just dumb cartoons like that. That whole, you utilize the image to tell the story versus like how we talked, using so much text, is kind of why Blood Sermon took that, because it was written from a very emotional standpoint of like harboring like the loneliness of this person who's ostracized from his community, going through the portals of hell to essentially like redeem himself for something that he didn't even do, is kind of the whole plot of that story. And I think everybody gets to that point in life where they can feel any emotion to that, any part of that, whether it's the end, the beginning, the middle. I think all of it's very, everybody feels lonely. Everybody feels like they got fucked over. And so that was like very driven in the story. And I think the imagery I wanted to use was something that was very dark, but very brightly colored. And I think it allowed me to use so much of the image to tell this story, because it draws you to it a lot more versus just reading it. Versus it being a very word heavy comic book.
Well, and dude, you said exactly what I was going to comment on next. Usually when people think about hell, it's a very like simple color palette, and it's the same color palette that people use when it comes to hell. Lots of reds and fires and oranges and all that. But you use so much vibrant color, and it still comes off as this hellacious place. You know what I mean? And that's the way that you use, and it's watercolor too, which is not easy to work with. And I know we talked with you about that on the last podcast, but the way that you're able to incorporate these bright, vibrant colors in a hellscape it's rad. It's really cool. And it really adds to the imagery that's there, and just great job, bro.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. You guys have seen a lot of my early work, even new stuff. I always wanted that contrast of like really weird dark shit, really bright contemporary almost pastel colors, because it does add that conflict of like, this is really gross, but it's really aesthetically pleasing to look at. It's hard, like when you see pieces that I've done that are like somebody like goring themselves or being like, and it's like, oh, this is really violent, but the color scheme is so bright that it mutes that a little bit. It almost makes it a little bit more lookable, I guess. And I wanted to utilize that through Blood Sermon because it is such a violent comic book. Which is fun. I like
you need the balance. You need that balance.
Yeah,
because no matter what, we look at colors as humans, and if they're bright, if they're vibrant, you don't think about death. You automatically think about life. And
it just makes it feel more cheery. You're just like,
oh, demons.
You can get away with a little bit more, maybe, and like, but it's not necessarily easier to get your point across. I mean,
I think it's more difficult for sure, because now you have to blend these things seamlessly,
right?
That where if you were going just hard on the
harder
gore,
reds and orange, just get the point across, and like exactly what you're looking at: black, red, orange, white, black, or whatever.
Yeah.
Very like negative associated colors with hell, where you're like, oh, the reds, the orange, the like dark purples, or like
grays, caves, dungeons. But that's also the thing too. You're not underground hell. It's it's its own world. It's its own space, which is cool. It has air, and it has clouds, and it has also slugs.
Yeah, really. That's a really cool world that you created there too. Like you've done a good job with consistency as you go along as well too. Like it's like you've been to hell and back, bro.
No, I appreciate it, man, and I think that's probably why it's taken so long to do it, is because I'm so anal about it. I'm like, it has to line up. You know, every aspect has to lead in, and it does correlate a lot to like wanting every part to seem cohesive. Like if there's even a part in like page 5 to 7 where he like falls through that hole that the big guy's in. So he's like falling into another layer of another dimension. And so it's like, it's almost like he's transporting again. And like, I wanted that to feel that weird where it's like, you don't really ever know like where exactly it is.
It's a callback to like Dante's Inferno and the different layers and levels of hell, right? It's like,
for sure. Yeah, like definitely. And I think it's even like, if you look at like old parts of like Revelations where like it talks about like hell being another dimension or not quote unquote, don't come at me, churchgoers. Like just it talks about hell being separated from earth. And I really wanted to incorporate that, like almost like old like Dragon Ball Z, how like heaven was like up in space. You know what I mean? I really wanted to pull that versus like this, oh, he's like consciously traveling type of shit. Like I really wanted it to be just, it takes magic to get there, and then you just go and you just gut the devil. Like I wanted it to be that easy.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, dude, because want people to hear it on your Patreon. You've been pretty active lately. It's like, what does all that entail, and how can people get on that?
Yeah, I think for a long time, Patreon was exclusively read blood sermon for like a long time, and it'll be that. But it kind of, when I got busier taking on other comic jobs, it went from sharing the process work, and then it kind of transitioned from, because I get a good amount of questions from younger artists or just artists in general, which is pretty cool because like I love any kind of, you know, help I can give. Like it's not a competition. I get frustrated with people that want to best other people to push them out of an industry to where it's like it's just creating shit. Like if the goal is to make a bunch of money, you pick the wrong profession.
Right.
And so I really wanted to utilize that opportunity, because on Instagram, you kind of have to market. You have to be like, hey, here's a new piece. You know, nobody wants to see a 1/4 inch shots of like work in progress pictures while you rant about like taking care of having a calendar. You know what I mean?
They don't like that?
Wait, we created a podcast off of that.
I love a good calendar. And so I kind of switched Patreon over to taking a lot of like the questions I get, getting a lot of the comments I get, just a lot of the shit you get for some of the stuff you make. I kind of switched Patreon to show some of the progress work on like Space Gator for Tim, or like some of the paintings that I'm working on, like showing some of that progress work that you're not going to get to see on Instagram, but also showing people like what tools I'm using, exactly what brushes, what paints. Because I get more than even my inking, I get a lot of like, oh, people ask like, how do you make it look like the paint's like spraying out, or like how do you get your green the way you get your, you know, whatever color it is. And I utilize Patreon to kind of go into detail on that, because a lot of times if somebody's just scrolling through Instagram, they don't know what the fuck a round 8 synthetic squirrel hair is. They're just like, I don't know. And so they don't care. And Patreon kind of gives it that exclusive.
The focus group. Yeah, right.
Yeah. And so it gives people more of an inclusive look, I would say, to, oh, I want to know like exactly what you use, how you use it, if you're using brush ink, if you're using pens. And it also, at the bottom of every post, gives you like a pretty lengthy look into like questions of like, how do I do this art-wise? What kind of job should I be taking? The judgment you get from other artists, like kind of I've had people that have followed my work that I've known who hate on my work because more people look into my work than theirs. And that's where I get into that. It's not a competition. Like, it's everybody in, like, to no capacity. It doesn't matter how good you are, how bad you are.
Easy for you to say, dude. I've been trying so hard.
Exactly. Like, that's the kind of shit I get. I wanted to utilize Patreon to kind of push that away versus where people want to be like, oh yeah, look at this, or like, this is how you have to do it. It's more of like a suggestion of like, this is the shit you shouldn't take. This is what you should, and quit having such, like, because I know a lot of people that'll miss opportunities because of ego. It's like, oh, I'm not taking it because they're not paying me. It's like, sometimes you got to take the shit that's going to put you in something that's going to get you published where you wouldn't.
Yeah.
And fighting like $175 fucking dollars.
Well, and I mean, yeah, exactly. How much are you making where, like, do an art show and you might make $40 and you do everything to get in that show that you host, you try to sell yourself that night, you know what I mean? Like, you're there and you're present, and you might make 40 or $50. It's like, what do you really think you're worth? Like, just draw something, dude.
I'll put it this way, and this has helped people because of that same reason. I've been fortunate enough to where, like, I can make a living making artwork financially, but I have never sold a painting at an art show in my entire career. I think
that's something that people get misconstrued as well, is that you have to be like this crazy artist that sells originals at every given opportunity,
right?
And that's how you make your money, and you just must make dope paintings. It's like, no, well, art's also just like anything else, like a conveyor belt, like a machine line of just like, yeah, I'll draw for you and I get paid X amount of dollars for it, or whatever. Like, there's very different routes you could take to be a successful artist.
100%. If you weigh all of that success on like financial viability, you've already made the mistake of being an artist. Like, if it's all for like, because money unfortunately is important, but if you go, oh, I'm going to get into art, I'm going to make a bunch of money. No, like, it's very few and far in between, unless you want to start being a piece of shit making NFTs. Like, it's not going to happen. And that's okay. Like, it's fine. Like, you make enough to make it, do what you love. But like, as soon as you subjugate that for, like, if somebody came to me and was like, make Blood Sermon PG and we'll give you this amount, there would be no fucking way possible to do that.
Right.
Like, right. But it's like, two, it's like, I don't care enough. Like, I would rather make what I make because I want to make it than try to get whatever like clout that there is out there. Like, I see a lot of people they get mad. They're like, oh, I'm submitting to insert big time comic book publisher here. And they're like, well, they don't like my work because of this, or this, or they said this, and then all they focus on is trying to push more and more of that. And like, I have a lot of friends that do that, or I have a ton of friends that are visual artists, and they go, oh, I didn't get this residency because of this. Like, it's over. And it's like, if you're besting it all on getting that like $1 million shot, like, you should want to, it'd be awesome for Blood Sermon to get picked up by Dark Horse or what have you. But it's like, if your only focus is that, it's valueless.
You're missing out on so many other opportunities.
Yeah, you're limiting yourself because it's like, you guys know me, I like baseball. It's like striking out looking. Like, you're just watching the ball go by and you go, not this one, not this one, not. And then sooner, like, you're fucked. And it's like, I'd rather do dumb stuff and have it fall flat, just wait around for nothing to happen.
Hell yeah.
For sure.
Hell yeah, dude. Fuck opportunity.
I'm right there. No, I want to go back to watercoloring a little bit, if we could.
Yeah, because I honestly, like, I know we talked about in the first episode, I think it was like episode 4 or something we did with you, about how you use watercolors and build them up to create the depth that you have in your pieces, your paintings. But I want to get like just one step deeper, if you will do it for me, and give me like 3 things when I start watercoloring to watch out for, because it's something I don't use and I want to try to mess with it. But like, what shouldn't I do?
Well, and really quick before you do all that, I think we should tell everybody listening, if you're not aware, watercoloring, you might do it when you're a kid and it's like finger painting or whatever, but truthfully in the art world, it's one of the more difficult ways to paint. It has a lot of process. It's time consuming.
It's hit or miss.
Yeah, it's
in a sense. I don't know how to do it though, so I think it's hard. Like just because
it comes
I don't
off
do it.
impossible to me.
The hardest part too, you need so to listen to the rest of this podcast, you have to Venmo me $3 and subscribe. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. You said this on the Patreon, but I'm trying to get this for free, bro.
Oh well, throw his Patreon in a link and we'll just beep right now
until you subscribe. No, but for real, I get that question pretty often, and I think, and this is fundamentally why watercolor is the hardest, is because it dries so fast.
Okay.
It's unforgiving. Like if you lay down blue and you go, shit, I meant to make that yellow. You can't cover it to make it yellow unless you go to some pretty extremes like watercolor grounding, trying to water out, like water down or dilute or just run like a heavy pigment, which most of the time doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the hardest parts with watercolor is the fact that it's drying so fast, it's pretty actively working against you. Like if you screw up with an acrylic, you can just color over that color again. You don't really have to worry about it.
Absolutely.
You'll have to repeat the question, but that was the answer to the first one of like, oh God.
Of like, hang down.
Whoa.
No, that like thinking about that will help me working on stuff, because when I lay a color down, I'm not thinking of what I want it to ultimately look like. I'm just thinking about laying the color down, because with acrylic you can do that. But with watercolor, that second pass, it creates this depth and this like division of the two layers that isn't always necessarily what you're going for. And it's like, all right, you have to be very like focused and conscious of what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And we can get real wild with it. And I said, are you treating your paper beforehand?
Absolutely not. I don't even know what that means.
Exactly. Like if you get your paper wet beforehand and let it dry, you're softening that tooth, and you're also putting moisture into the paper. So then that it gives you a little more availability to break some of those hard lines where you get a little more mixing time.
Yeah.
But that also plays into the weight of the paper you're using, the tooth you're using.
Right. And ultimately, like, it's crazy too. When I was young, I didn't think that different types of paper in the art store, like watercolor paper or, charcoal paper, whatever it is, that they're labeled that way. I was like, this is just a gimmick for them to sell paper. But with watercolor, it is so important, like to have.
I feel half of it's bullshit. Sometimes I'm like, this paper feels the same.
Yeah.
But
I feel like that consistency with watercolor paper, you have to at least have that thickness, and like, you're not going to be able to do this shit on printer paper.
Right. No, I tell people that all the time, because I have a lot of people that are friends of mine who are artists who like will draw something like, oh, I'm gonna watercolor it. And I'm like, what are you using? They're like, Bristol paper. And you'll have a lot of people tell you like, you can watercolor on Bristol, but it's gonna gray. It's not gonna look right. Like it's not a paper that's treated to absorb water. So it really does matter a lot. If I'm doing like a very detailed, deep, like large scale painting, I'm using 300-pound cold press watercolor and I'm inking with a brush. If I'm doing comic books, or if I'm doing like this guy, like this one, I think you've seen.
Oh, I love that guy.
Hell yeah.
I'm doing that on 140-pound cold press because it's so much inking that I need to be able to use a pen. And if you have to, you have to take those things into consideration with watercolor, because you can't just gesso over like a shitty Creative Mark canvas with nice gesso and paint over it like how you can with acrylic. With watercolor, the paper you're using is the surface that it is going to like adhere to.
Right.
And so you have something that's going to take those colors. Like a cold press versus a hot press is it's a rougher press. So it's got more of what you call a tooth to it. So it takes longer for the color to absorb into the paper. But with a 140-pound press, it's a thinner paper. So it takes more layers to get a vibrant color versus a 300-pound, where there's so much, because all of watercolor paper is cotton. and it's taking so much for it to get through 300-gram paper that surface color stays on top a lot easier.
So this has been Patreon episode number 4 with
yeah. Hey, no, for real. Speaking of the Patreon, like
what that was.
This is like what you get when you follow Hank. Like, look, Hank, he might not talk himself up. He's very humble, man, but he knows what he's talking about when it comes to this kind of stuff. If you have any question or any desire to learn how to watercolor or like get into this thing, man, his Patreon is a steal for the information that you get.
I would kill for it. Like when I was a kid going to community college, it was like you were at the luck of the draw of how good your teacher was and how you related to them. Now it's like you can pay a few bucks and know that you like their work and like learn from people like yourself where you break this stuff down, which I still have no clue, dude. 15 years later, I'm 34 and I'm still like, how do I watercolor? You know what I mean? Like, I just don't have the means to figure it out.
I know what you mean. I learned all of it from like screwing up, finding new stuff, trying different paints, like, and it's one of those things where it is so much like, you just have to like dig in that. Like, I wish, and it's not like, I know a lot. I wish I had that availability when I started, because I would have saved myself a lot of money from buying bullshit and two, knowing what I need to be painting on, because a lot of times you'll go to an art store and they'll tell you that you can use 90-pound weight and get a good result, when the reality is if you're doing anything over like light landscaping, heavy detailing, you're gonna like wear away the tooth of the paper. And I've done a gajillion times.
A lot of times, especially if you're not going to a small independent art store where people that are working artists work at, if you're going to Michael's or Hobby Lobby or something, they're just going to give you the most generic answer. They're going to give you the thing that someone told them that they don't really mess with this stuff. They're just like, yeah, this is what this is.
I worked at one of those independent ones, and I tell you that I was probably the only employee there that knew anything. So it's first people go, oh, I want to work at an art store. It's cool. And you go, hey, can you show me where the gouache is? And they'll take you to like just random shit.
Like I've had people buy
like I've had friends of mine, I'll be like, go get white gouache if you're trying to cover that for your watercolor, and they'll go buy like acrylic gouache. And like if it's a gloss finish acrylic gloss, it's still a plastic based paint. You're not gonna be able to watercolor over that.
Right.
And nobody will tell you that in an art store. One, because they're trying to push whatever product.
Yeah, they're just trying to sell.
Yeah, but two, it's like a lot of people just don't know.
I was gonna say they might not know what the difference of painting on an acrylic over an oil is gonna do. It's like that. No, the underlayer is gonna come through, and you're not gonna get the result you want.
Yeah, and it's just any water-based paint is not gonna cover a plastic-based paint.
Right.
It's because the surface is not gonna accept it. They don't tell you that. I've seen tons of like well-known artists be like, oh yeah, watercolor over your acrylic, and like they know that that's not going to work. It doesn't hold. They just don't know what they're telling people to do about the style that they're doing. And you don't have to know a lot to be a good artist. I only know a lot is because I used to be a really bad painter. You know what I mean? Like I used to just not know how to paint.
Yeah.
And I had to sit down and just make myself learn. Because the resources aren't always there. Not everybody's got that resource. And so it's good when you can go somewhere like Patreon, at Blood Summer on Patreon, and see somebody who goes like, oh, I've had my dick in the dirt. Like, here's how you get out of this situation, versus having to restart every time you screw up, because watercolor is not really going to let you cover it.
Yeah.
And you've kind of shifted into that on your Patreon recently, like doing more process and like showing how you come to the conclusions that you're coming to, and like start to finish, right?
Yeah, for sure. Because it's a lot less profanity. So if you're younger, you can read it. Don't worry. It's not just gonna fuck 30 times. But no, I have shifted that because, you know, a lot of the comic books I'm working on, obviously Blood Sermon takes an immeasurable amount of time. It's ridiculous. And some of the comics I'm working on, I can't really show you everything because you got to buy it. You know, obviously they're trying to, you know, make books, they're trying to print. And a lot of the other stuff is stuff for Do the Damn Thing issue 2. But I wanted to make that shift on Patreon. So it's not just pictures of like pencils from Blood Sermon. It's also a look into what inks we're going to be using, what paints we're using, but also answering any of those kind of questions that you would get or that you don't want to ask, like, how do I market my work? Or like, you know, and because everybody thinks Instagram is the end all be all when the reality is it's not catered to what you're using it as. And so it comes into how can I have stand-up work that's viable and making me a career without having 30,000 Instagram followers. Because I don't have an immense amount of followers, but I've gotten to do a lot of work that people who have a lot more than me don't get to do because I've learned how to get my work into the scenes I've wanted to get into. I mean, I recently did a death metal band, you know, like something. The last podcast I ended it with saying, if you're a death metal band, I want to do. You did.
I remember that. Yeah. It played out for you.
Yeah. And it just you know, luck of the draw, whatever, just reaching out to the boys in Paratheon and being like, yo, can I do a logo? And, you know, it wasn't something where I was trying to make money. It wasn't somewhere I was trying to do t-shirts. It was literally just, can I do something for you? Because that's what we talked about before. It's like, not every opportunity is a money grab or a clout grab. Like, so just to get your foot in the door that you're trying to get into.
It's about being a part of something.
Yeah. And I think a lot of young artists lose that because they go, oh, I've got to be an influencer, a content creator, I've got to have this amount of followers versus like, I'm just going to, whatever opportunity I can take that's cool, I'm going to do it. Like, versus if you get, you know, a hip hop artist that wants you to do an album, you go, they only have 300 followers. Why the fuck would I do it? I'm waiting for somebody with 1 million. And then that dude's album blows up the week you denied it. Yeah. You know, you never know. And so it's like, you might as well take those chances and do it because you really want to do it versus going, I want to do it because I want to be famous or I want to be cool, I guess. And like, don't get me wrong, like I'd love to just be chilling at home all day, like making comic books, not having to go to work. But until then, you just take the opportunities you can to do it because you really want to do it. And that's kind of what I wanted a lot of the advice on Patreon to be, is less about like, here's how you make a bunch of fucking money and here's how you're like spraying champagne in front of a Lamborghini. You know, it's like, here's how you make what you want to make on a commercial scale and then still be able to make a bunch of weird stuff. Like I did menu art for like for Dogwood Bar in Charlotte, which is very famous. And like the last several of pieces I've done have like profanity and boobs in them. You know what I mean? Like it's that balance because of like, how can I do it to this scale? Meanwhile, I can still get down and dirty. And that's a lot of the shift I wanted to give on Patreon is like, you can do it both ways. You don't have to just go one way and get no support and no opportunity. You don't have to go one way where like you're selling your soul to do like shitty logos and like Hallmark postcards.
Right.
Yeah. Just because you did menu art doesn't mean it had to be looking like TGI Fridays. You know, you were able to kind of bring a menu art into your style.
Well, then also,
if it had to look like TJ Fridays, it doesn't mean that you can't go back and just draw dicks and boobs all over another painting.
There you know?
Well, I was gonna say also it's the freedom of being able to do like the projects you want to work on. Like you said, you're getting ready to do the damn thing too. I know we talked about it, and you're gonna have some of Blood Sermon like incorporated into the last few pages of that.
Yeah, but full color.
It's like you did well with the first zine, and then you get to work on this one, and it's what you want to do. It's not like it's literally, whatever you want to draw. You don't have to worry about like who's directing it or who's writing it or if it's going to hit. it's like, it's just my drawings.
And that's success that a lot of artists don't see. Like when you get to start doing yourself and doing you, like in your art and creating how you want and when you want, that's success. You know, a small amount. You know, it might not be selling out an art show at the Met Gala, but you're still successful in the fact that you are not having to be forced to create TGI Friday menu art.
Shit you don't want to do.
Yeah.
No, exactly. And I think that's a good point. And I think that's exactly it. Is I had a lot of conversations from like family and just people in general of like, when are you going to do something else? Because like nothing was happening for a long time. It's like there was no comics, there was no nothing. You're just drawing. And it's once you can you take all that and you can take a step back and after the fact and go, here's the points that like it was super difficult. Here's the points where, people start to go like, what the hell are you doing? And here are the points where like you start to see like it start to take off. And I definitely know every artist feels that. And I know any artist that hasn't yet is going to hit a point that they do. And I wanted to use all of that to help people because it's so easy just to be nice, just to be helpful, just to extend a hand versus and have an ego and be like, I'm hot shit. Like it's no, and obviously how I mean this. It's no like ego trip, but I've gotten to do a lot creatively. I've gotten to do a lot of shit people my age have not done, won't do. And all of that is because of ego. It's because, I'm too good to do this, or like, I don't want to take this chance because I don't need to. And a lot of people may, because of other reasons, go, I don't agree with that. But it does come down to that. Like I went through a point where I was like, I have to just accept and do whatever I have to do to make art. Yeah, and it making art so much easier because you step away from the ideology that you have to be something.
Boom.
That's the point. I wanted to do all of that on Patreon, is to just not to ego trip to anybody, not to like try to like virtue signal anybody, be like, oh, this is how you, but to be like, you don't have to stress about every capacity of, oh, I've got to make it, I've got to do this, I've got to be this way. Like if you go 4 months without making artwork, like you're still an artist, that's okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to sit around and like either try to tell everybody what you're working on, how much you're working on it, how cool it's going to be. Because like, if it's, always big plans, but it's always in the works, like it's nothing.
Right.
Yep.
And so don't even talk about that stuff and like, buy it at holymountainprinting.com, but you quite literally just do the damn thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
dude.
That's
look at that.
And that's like kind of like a psychedelic trope of like killing your ego and like slaying yourself to like be a better person and not thinking about, your how proud you are or how stoked you are in yourself. Not to say you shouldn't have self-worth, obviously, but just the idea of like, you're not the hottest shit. Like do the damn thing and see where it gets you.
Well, and don't be hard on yourself and be like, oh, I have to be better. I have to do it more like this person. Like find your own voice, find your own style and allow it to be that. And don't try and change it. Let what comes out be what comes out, and don't critique it with some other eye, because us as the
comparing
public,
yourself to other artists is the worst thing you do.
Yeah, because us as the outsider view sees that as your style, Not you particular, but the ubiquitous you. You know what I'm saying?
No. I know. No, I'm with you 100%. I went through that for a long time, like a really long time of like trying to mimic attributes of other artists and just trying to take that and make it mine or shift my style to that. And I had, and I had my art teacher from high school. I sent her a piece one time and she was like, it's great. She was like, but loosen up. Because it was like the pencils and you lose your style as soon as you start to get too specific, too tight, too whatever.
Absolutely.
And like, even like when I've sent like that piece I showed before, that's like the cult leader, when I sent like the pencils to my girlfriend, she was like, loosen it up, because whenever I try to be so perfect, so fine-tuned like a lot of other artists, I lose the like quote unquote like perfect line work.
The
that
magic of it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The natural flow of it.
Yeah, exactly. I make it too rigid to where like my work is known for being very like wobbly and loose. And I go through that battle still as somebody who's been doing this for a while. And I try to be as transparent as I can, especially on Patreon, because where Instagram, like I said before, is like there's no point. And I try to kind of give that explanation as best as I can to a lot of people, because I see it with a lot of people who, weirdly enough, I get it with a lot of people who like my artwork, who will then like send me pictures of like, oh, working on a new drawing, to where like, and I'm fine with it, I don't care, where they're trying to mimic what I'm doing. Where I'm like, okay, like you're over detailing, but you're over detailing in the wrong places. Essentially, you just have a massive black smudge on a hand or something, to where you need to, if you like that style, incorporate it to how you already draw, because it's only going to benefit you versus going, I've got to learn how Sam Keith draws. I've got to learn how Mike Mignola draws. I've got to learn how to paint like Rembrandt.
But it's hard too when you're telling somebody like, this is what I do, but then like make every stroke intentional. And it's like, oh shit, that's like, so it's easier said than done if you know what that means. Like it's very intimidating. So, but honestly, dude, like this has been Patreon fucking 101.
Yeah, seriously, you're giving away a free episode real quick.
I think you just said everything that people pay for. So thanks for doing that for free.
No, and in that vein, anybody listening, go sign up for Hank's Patreon. It is well worth
At
it.
Blood Sermon.
Blood Sermon is
it
an
blood
awesome
underscore sermon?
I think it's just Blood Sermon.
One word.
We can fix that because I don't know. I think it's just Blood Sermon. Instagram's blood underscore sermon.
Right.
Okay.
So well, that'll get you to the link in the bio and go to the Patreon. Sign up, pay the few dollars, learn the lessons from the man himself.
Totally worth it. And if you see what you like, we've got a bunch of prints at ratneststickerco.com as well. Hank has gifted, or not gifted, but blessed us with some prints to
and
throw
originals.
On there. And originals, that's right.
Some originals just up.
Amazing stuff, dude, really.
But yeah, dude, thanks for giving us the 101 and talking to us for an hour.
Of course, boys.
It's nice catching up with you.
It's great seeing you, boy.
Always, dude. I missed you guys. You guys are my favorite people. I got to come out there soon. I got to meet Jim's dog. Got to meet your dog. Got to break some of y'all's stuff.
Bro, you make it out this way, you got a place to stay, and we'll rage. We'll show you the same good time that you showed us in Raleigh out here in Cali. Come this way, bro.
Hell, you guys are my boys. I hope you're well. Stay well.
Do the same, bro. Thanks again for making time.
Anything else you want to plug before we get out here?
Not too much. Just plug, obviously, Do the Damn Thing too. Really constantly been trying to reiterate that there will be 5 printed pages of Blood Sermon in there. I know people are really itching for Blood Sermon. That's why I've been doing so much of the zines, is to give it time. Like, as much as I love the people reading it, like I don't give a shit how often you're like, just print it. Like I can't rush it. We've talked about, you know, how like, you guys know how important it is to me, and you know how important that imagery is. And so I've been trying to put out, you know, comics in between to really kind of subdue that need. And so I definitely on Do the Damn Thing too, always want to be promoting that you're going to get a pretty good look at Blood Sermon. It'll be really cool to see it in color. It'll be really cool to see it printed. But besides that, keep your eye out from Goatman Comics for Space Gator, and probably going to open commissions up in the 1st of January.
All right.
There it is. And me and Hank might have a collab zine if we can fit it in the next couple months here.
Love that.
We will fit it in because I want to do it real bad.
And me and Hank are also going to have a Cool Friends video coming out in the near future too, just because we want to have something. I want to have something with Hank too, so we're just gonna hang out together.
Jim. Yo, anything. I have no care about my reputation. So
Anything he does with me is gonna be terrible.
Dude,
obviously.
if we do a video project of you and Hank like having a conversation, we call it Cool Friends.
Cool Friends,
It's
bro.
pretty
It's
sick.
a Cool Friends video.
It's pretty
Cool
sick.
friends, bro. I genuinely don't care about any footage. If you're like, oh, friend I don't care. I have anything I've said online is online already
It's
from
there.
years ago. I've been dumb my whole life. I have no care. So I'm down to do anything. I'll get married. We get married. I don't give a shit.
Hey, careful, that's legal here.
Let's do it.
Hey, I'm in the Bible Belt, baby.
Yeah.
You come to California, we're going to Las Vegas.
That's right. Buy me a real big ring. I love you,
carat
bro.
plus, dude.
I love you, bro.
Hey,
This has
honestly,
been
dude,
awesome talks, man.
yeah.
It's great seeing your face. I
I mean-
love seeing you smiling every time I see your stuff on Instagram. I try and like it or send you a little fire emoji or send you some dumb
I
shit.
love it. I appreciate it.
You're killing it. Keep it up, bro. Keep crushing it, and love you, bro.
Let me do this little outro real quick and then we'll talk more. This has been another episode of the Ratnest Podcast. You can catch us every week on YouTube, Google, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. For art, zines, prints, comics, anything that we talk about on the show, go to ratneststickerco.com. Jim?
Hi, I'm Jim.
I'm Jim.
That was good.
Great episode, bro.
Yeah, dog.